"20 years ago, I fell in love with these two pigs." I mean, it was more than that. It was a sign, it was a business, and it was the promise of savings.
Back then, you could talk to any stranger, it seemed, almost anybody, and they would know about Save on Meats.
Yeah, I mean, the sign was gritty and almost always in need of a power wash. But every time I passed the sign in the business, there was something that just cut to the core.
Especially if it's turning, it's always turning. Save on, arrows pointing down, Save on Meats, come on in. The pink arrows are drawing you into the business, right?
The 1 million kilowatts of neon tubing were one thing. But once you entered the doors, you realized that you were in an almost entirely forgotten era.
It had one of the best neon signs on the street, and it had, at the back, a fabulous little coffee shop, and you would go sit there for some of the best cheeseburgers on the planet.
But unfortunately, in the meat business, everything has an expiry date. Even the community.
But it's so difficult now because of what's happened down there. The customers that used to shop at Woodward's would shop at Save On. The customers that shopped at Army Navy would come to Save On. All those stores are gone.
And while all its neighbors fled, Save On Meats was the last beacon, or should I say bacon, of hope. Oh man, it's a bad joke. I was stumped because no sooner did I fall in love with Save On Meats when I read that the owner, after 52 years of service, was closing shop.
It was like pulling a heart out of a community because nobody wanted this business to close. The entire community didn't want this business to close.
Now, change can be a very difficult thing to accept when you lose something you love. Unless that change is worth saving.
Okay. Wow. This is going back a few years. Back to March 14th, 2009. There I stood in the rain across the street from my beloved Save On Meats.
Aesthetically speaking, there was nothing else like it. Its bright neon signage and pink pastel facade screamed, "We're still open for business." But to the untrained eye, the business looked tired. But it wasn't so much about the exterior. It was about what was inside. Unfortunately, after today, it would all be gone. At the core of Save On Meats was its giant wraparound butcher counter, the largest in Vancouver, which at any given time had 5 or 6 staff ready to customize any order from any piece of meat at any price range. But as glorious as the butcher counter was, my favorite spot was the coffee shop at the back. It's here where my younger, more mentally stuck self would escape into a world of question and wonder. Like, how is this burger only $3.99? Is it real meat? How did this business survive 52 years of operating in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Vancouver? Wow. This is really hurting some people. Is all this going to be torn down for condos or towers? What's going to happen to my pigs? The sign, the service, the selection, the savings? I turned to the first person I saw and I just poured my heart out about how much I love Save On Meats, how much I cared about the business, how much eventually I wanted to own a business like this. Call it fate or divine intervention, but the lady behind the counter took my phone number, smiled, and said,
Hi. She goes, why don't you come to the Philippines with us? I go, what? She's like, yeah, come to the Philippines. I go, you and who? She's like, me and Al. I go, you mean the owner, Al, right over there, the guy who runs this place? She's like, yeah. And then she goes, Al, this guy wants to come to the Philippines with us. Is that okay? And Al's like,
what? Now, this is where the story gets kind of crazy, because I was speaking with Victoria, and Victoria was the wife of Al, who was the owner of Save On Meats. Now, Al was making some big headlines, and everybody knew who he was, but they didn't know who I was. In fact, when Victoria yelled over to Al and said, hey, this guy's coming with us to the Philippines, Al kind of just shrugged it off like I was another crazy customer and it would never happen. But then again, he had other things on his mind.
I mean, this was unexpected because I woke up that morning wanting to capture the end of the Save On Meats story. But what I didn't know is I hadn't even skimmed through the first chapter.
And I don't know how many people would jump on a plane, fly 16 hours to a place they had never been with people they barely knew. This is my chance to meet Al, to get to know more about him and his story. I had only spoken to Victoria a few times over the phone, so I didn't really know what I was in for. But when I arrived, she met me with such a huge smile, and I felt like I had found a new family. In fact, there was very little time to talk about Save On Meats because we were just enjoying the moment. And also celebrating the wedding of Victoria's niece, Nancy, who also worked at Save On Meats. And obviously there was one person that I really wanted to chat with, and that was Al. And I don't even know where to start, because Al had always been somewhat of a mysterious man. Out of the limelight, not wanting any attention or gratification, just humble and seasoned. And then there was me. That was kind of the opposite. I was in my late 20s, full of ambition and dreams, but there was something holding me back. I was afraid of everything from relationships to starting my own business to just making a move. I was in this paralysis mode. And my method to deal with it was just to escape. And paint myself as the coolest guy in the world, which was obviously staged. And that's what drew me to Al. He had this calmness and this confidence that I was definitely searching for. I just needed to find the right time to sit down and chat with Al, away from the partying and the celebration. We returned from the Philippines, and Save On Meats had never looked quieter. Al kept the market running, but had closed the butcher shop. Either way, he was suited up like it was the opening day in 1957. And I guess it was important because developers were calling. But he was looking for a very specific buyer, one that would uphold the same business that he had for the last 57 years.
Are you okay on the line there? The question I had at the time was Al giving me the chance to save on meats? Because every time we talked, he had this twinkle in his eye, this promise, like, it could possibly be yours. The problem was I had no idea how I would ever run a meat business, or even what it took. I had no idea. So I thought, why not meet with Al at a place that I know he's comfortable in, because he'd always talked about it.
And that was his house. Now, I envisioned the owner of Save On Meats to be living in a mansion, but it was actually just a modest 1950s rancher.
Ready to go, babes?
And so this was my first time introducing my new girlfriend, Candace, to Al and Victoria. And just like Save On Meats, Al and Victoria's home was being surrounded by change. Well, towers, that is. And it felt like we could be saying hello or goodbye in the same visit because all this could be gone.
Hey, Victoria! Hey!
It's so nice seeing Victoria because she's always the same. Unlike Al, who has two different versions. There's Work Al, who's very serious.
Have a look at this one here.
But then there's Pioneer Al, who's just so excited to share his stories.
Is there a picture?
Yeah, this is this house when it was brand new. Yeah, look at the light with it.
Wow.
60 years old.
This is the house? This is the house?
Yeah, look at through the light.
No way.
You get a better picture that way.
That is cool. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All the trees behind you. That must have been something else.
Yeah, you can see the change. I built this on over here.
In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, let's talk about Save On Meats. What is its future? But as Al's pulling out these old photo albums and reliving the stories of his life, I'm seeing a deeper story than just Save On Meats. And it's starting to speak to my soul.
This is the Everglades, part of it. Like, we have the little units to rent, like little houses. We had about 17, I think, of them. That was my wife there before. He's gone.
It's funny that Al chose this album to review with me and Candace, because it really spoke to some of my fears and insecurities of settling down, having a family. Yet here, Al's showing me a photo album of this pivotal moment in his life when he's 22 years old, newly married, and the owner of a ramshackle resort called the Everglades. And just like me, he's trying to find that balance between adventure, responsibility, and following your dreams.
But the story of Save On Meats, specifically Al's portion of the story, dates back way before the resort. It started back when Al was just a kid. 8 years old, living in New Westminster, looking for every side hustle possible. It's almost like he was destined to save.
It started with running his own newsstand when he was only 8 years old. He would set bowling pins at the local bowling alley, chopped firewood. By 12 years old, he was selling his custom-made wheelbarrows, and even caught and sold fish from the Fraser River, just steps from his childhood home in New Westminster. In fact, Al was so good at fishing that at 16 years old, him and his friend bought an old fishing boat, remodeled it, and putted 600 kilometers up BC's rugged coastline. With an old map, no life jackets, escaping death on a number of occasions, only to earn a small fortune in commercial fishing.
Al had the ability to dream of something and make it become a reality. It's like manifestation.
But as much as Al loved the thrill of fishing, there were two dreams that he just couldn't shake. One was to have a family, and the second was to own his own meat market.
Why, there are nearly 40 different cuts to a side of beef.
You know your meat.
The best possible price at the meat counter.
Because what happened was that before I had any clue about meat markets or anything like that, one of my best friends, his dad owned a meat market down Columbia Street in downtown New Westminster. So we'd go there after school and clean up, and even at that age we were able to serve a few customers and stuff, and that's what I made up my mind that I wanted to get into a meat market, because there was so much activity and people were so happy. You know, they were just happy to buy something, and I thought that's what I want to get into. So his dad used to give us 25 cents, something like that, at the end of the day, and we'd go over to the trolley bus that was on Columbia Street, and we'd take that trolley bus all the way to Vancouver, to the corner of Carroll and Hastings. And there was a lot of movies along Hastings Street. On both sides there was movies. And we'd try to choose which one. And we always liked to see the vaudevilles. So walking along Hastings to Abbott, one of the things that stood out was Jones Tent and Awning, this great big building with a huge sign turning around. And it had two doors in it, two entrances. And I said to Ronnie, I says, Ronnie, one day when I grow up, I'm going to buy that building and put a meat market in it. And he said, oh, yeah, sure. So I forgot about it, he forgot about it. Nothing ever came of it.
So fast forward a few years, Al is now 24 years old. He's married, he has a growing family, and he's bought and sold a number of businesses, like his commercial fishing venture and the resort, and a number of grocery stores in between. And he's feeling a little stifled because none of the businesses have really cut it for him.
So, searching for inspiration, Al takes a stroll through his childhood stomping grounds, downtown New Westminster, and he's feeling a little lost. He wants to find a job. He needs to find a job. And he even considers reapplying at the butcher shop that he worked at 10 years prior, when he notices something across the street.
There was a guy standing looking in a window, and he saw me as I walked by, and I stopped and looked in the window too, and I could see it was a meat market. And I totally got interested. I'm looking. He says, oh, he says, are you a butcher or something like that? And I said, oh yeah, I'm the best there is.
The man was Sonny Wask. He was roughly the same age as Al and just starting his meat market empire with his first business, Front Street Meats.
He said, well, look, we're opening up in a couple of days. Come on in and we'll give you a job. So I went to work for him. After being there for about a year, he came to me one day and he said, look, I've bought a building downtown Vancouver and I'm going to put a meat market in it. How would you like to go and run that one? And he says, if you run it as if you own it, one day when I'm finished with it, I'll sell it to you at a really good price. But you got to run it as if you own it. And you know, that meant long hours and 7 days a week sometimes and stuff like that. Eh?
I was 22 when I first started there, and I worked there for 35 years.
1,
Yeah.
2, 3.
When Save On Meats was first opened, it was opened in 1957 by Sonny Wask. He owned a small meat store on Columbia Street in New Westminster. So he opened up Save On Meats with a meat counter, a produce counter, a seafood counter, a restaurant, dry goods, and it was at that time it was quite the thing when it opened up. They had, when opening day in 1957, they had about 35 girls behind the counter serving, and they had about 15 meat cutters upstairs and maybe multiple other people doing other stuff. Right? It was quite the task.
Sonny Wask spared no expense when it came to launching Save On Meats. He had the original Jones tent and awning sign expanded to 3 stories and included the 2 pigs. He ran a massive print campaign and the store was packed. It was a perfect combo. Sonny brought the business acumen, and Al brought the service and an extreme dedication to savings. And this worked out perfect because while Sonny and his entire family were expanding their retail empire with meat markets and appliance stores and department stores, Al just wanted to focus on one thing, and that was Save On Meats. I mean, who could blame him? Save On Meats was right in the middle of the action. And so Al was able to provide for his family and follow his dreams. But soon, things would change.
Wow, these are amazing photos. Holy cripes. This is like taking me back.
Vancouver's Hastings Street had been a hub from the 1880s all the way into the 1960s and 70s. But at some point in time, things began to take a turn.
Vancouver Archives, here we come.
I'm really curious as to what caused the decline of Hastings Street. So I thought, let's make this research official. Storefront vacancies had been on the rise since the 1970s, but the big explosion, literally, took place in the early 90s when 43% of the Hastings Street storefronts were vacant. This was the iconic Woodward's building, which was just feet from Save On Meats. It closed in 1993, but was demolished in 2006. But don't worry, a portion of the building was saved and still stands today. And although Vancouver loves tearing down its history, there are still some organizations and some people that try and preserve our colorful past. Would the Museum of Vancouver's 1950s exhibit be the resting place for my 2 pigs?
Light is what to a city?
Oh, light to a city, to be really super cheesy, is life, because you need light, you need the vibrancy, but you cannot have the sickly glow of a street light as your only source of light. You can kill a street in so little time if you just turned all the signs off and just had street lights. You need the layers of color and reflection. And, you know, through the 1950s, 60s, 70s, even into the early 80s, Hastings Street was a very vibrant, lively street because you had a number of theaters along the street. and you had the marquees that threw light down onto the sidewalk, but you also had all the coffee shops. And Hastings Street, given its proximity to the port, given its major transportation route for buses, etc., and the theaters, it had a massively popular cafe culture. But as the social scene changes, and there's a shift in all manner of factors in that area, you start to see the closing of those things, and then that loss of business, the loss of light, and then the loss of street activity. And so it just leaves a vacant space to be filled with other things.
It was like the unimaginable happened. Al and Sonny found themselves facing a Hastings Street that they were not familiar with. And it was partly due to a change in transportation, to the movement of people to suburbs. Then you had the supermarkets, and even worse, the shopping malls. And all of this left a community in decay, which brought in the drugs and the junkies and the turf wars, followed by the theft and the stabbings, and Al was right in the middle of it. By the 1980s, Sonny Wask had made his fortune in the meat business and was ready to leave the deteriorating Hastings Street behind.
So over the years, it started slowing down. So I think he's seen a business that wasn't working out that well, so he offered it to Al. Well, Al knew, this is a business. I can turn this business around, make money out of it, right? Because when Al bought it, it was a slow business.
The thing that I had to do was figure out how to stay in business or get up and move out of there altogether. And I wasn't going to do that, so I was here first. I'm not moving.
What we have here is the fireproof file cabinet that was at Save On Meats, and it is full of stuff. This is all newspaper clippings in here. It's loaded.
Wow. This is a treasure trove of stuff.
Yeah. So I didn't even start because I don't know what you want. I don't know how much time you want to spend going through this stuff.
This is Al's daughter, Sandy.
1, 2, 3.
Save on. Meats.
Now, although she was at the closing day of Save On Meats, today, 15 years later, is the first time I've spoken with her.
Probably could find it in here though.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's lots of movies filmed there too. Here's one called Movie Productions. I forgot about that.
Oh, there's a folder called Movie Productions in
Yeah,
there.
there was
Oh, let's have a look.
few movies filmed there.
I mean, it took forever just to get this interview. And I gotta say thanks to her daughter Robin for organizing it. But I was tenderized by the fact that I had discovered the holy grail of Save On Meats artifacts. Which, I mean, included surveillance camera shots from 15 years ago.
So that's another question I had. Like, people were saying, "Oh, Save On Meats is so cheap. Is it real meat? Like, is the meat? Is it good quality meat?"
You know why he could sell it at that price? It's because he bought in quantity. Because he had all the freezer space. We had 5 humongous freezers, walk-in freezers. So he could bid on a whole lot that no one else could do that. No one else was equipped to handle that kind of volume. So he usually got what he wanted.
Have you ever begged the universe for something only to receive it and then freak out because you don't really know how to sustain it? Well, that's kind of the situation Al was in the 80s and 90s. Because Al is now in his 40s. He has a building to maintain with a changing demographic, more crime, more poverty. He has employees to pay, product to buy, and he needs to get creative.
So there's all kinds of different ideas you got to come up with to do that. And one of them was to make sure that the customers that came in had someone that could serve them that knew their language. So I didn't have to do hardly anything except hire people, and they brought in the customers.
You had the job if you spoke another language.
We had new immigrants coming to Canada. If the customer wanted something we never did, we just did it for them, and we were blessed because we made money from that because we started doing more of that, and more people would come in, they wanted that.
When I first started, they used to sell frog legs and rabbits, intestines and beef blood, but yeah, if you wanted it, he would get it.
We sold beef feet, these huge beef feet, and people would take it and they make a stew out of it. It was a real nice stew, but you would never imagine who would buy a beef hoof or a foot. Nobody would sell it, right? We made tons of money from it. It's unbelievable, but people loved it, right?
This one fellow came in and he said, "Can you get me some goat skins?" Because he wanted to make drums. Sure. So he brought in goat skins. We had to process that, but very few places would do it.
One of the questions that always comes up when I talk about Save On Meats is, where's the meat from? And I guess that's a legit question based on the history of the community. But I'm proud to say that Al, Paul, and Sonny always prioritized quality.
All of the meat they purchased was from federally approved suppliers across BC and Alberta.
And so the next question after that is, how did they get it so cheap? The way that they could offer the savings was based on Al's simplistic lifestyle, maintaining his debts, paying his employees, his suppliers on time, managing his building to whatever standard it needed to be without going too high or too low, and maximizing his freezer space. Al had 3 floors above the market, and he maximized freezer space for storage, so he could buy in volume and store for the future. And after that, it was about creating relationships with the suppliers.
I think a lot of companies that we dealt with, we were kind of taking care of them because they overproduced or something happened, and we'd always take care of them and say, yeah, sure, we'll take it, we'll take this. And we never really had oh no, it's too much. We just took it.
And so they would take that volume product and either store it, sell it fresh at a savings, or they would process it. I don't think anything went to waste at Save On Meats. If they couldn't sell it, they would cook it, fry it, barbecue it, and that product would then go and feed the community. It was like waste diversion before it was even a catchphrase.
Oh, and the emergencies too, like there would be like a semi that broke down. Okay, so that semi's got to be emptied now. It's on the freeway somewhere. It's got 5,000 pounds of pork butts in there. What do you want to give us for that, Al? So my dad would put a bid on, it's yours. Because otherwise they're going to have to dump it, right? So right away, all hands on deck, we got to go get the pork.
You would drive out somewhere to get pork?
Yeah, and he had a refrigerated truck and many trips back and forth, but that's why he could sell it at a good price, because of all the work that went into it, the labor to get it there. But it was cheap. He bought it cheap.
Al taught me how to do the buying. The way he bought things, I did things the same way he did, exactly the same. And my buying power was unbelievable, the buyings I used to do. And then I pass those savings on to the public, right? And that concept works because it's all about taking care of people and their needs and what they want and what brings them back. right? That's the thing, what brings them back.
What brings them back? Now, that could be a very simple question, or it could be very deep.
So you've been shopping here for how long?
Well, not 7 years.
I think this is a landmark. You know, I've been here 15 years, and sad to see it go.
What did you buy on your last day?
2 T-bone steaks.
What are you going to miss the most about Save On Meats?
The love from all the women and the butchers. You know, they've all been really good to me and my kids.
We get guaranteed 100% good service all the time.
Yeah.
Always.
Here, actually, it's one of the only places that I've been able to find really good prices on buffalo roast and buffalo ground meat and venison and caribou.
But anyway, I got the oxtails. It was sentiment because my mother used to always make stew out of oxtail.
What are you going to miss most about Save On Meats?
The prices and the location, because it was here for the people, not here for profit. It was here for the people.
So you had a big shop today. What did you buy today?
Just a few things, because we're up here now. So that's the family fishing. My mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, and my sister, and I was taking the picture. And I don't know if there's a year on this or not. My mother was a very meticulous housekeeper. My aunt said that you could eat off the floors at any time because my mother would keep them so shiny. And she just waited on my dad, hand and foot. I mean, that was the way back then. She took very good care of her family.
And then at what age did she pass away, or what year?
She was 51. Yeah,
And
pretty young.
What did she pass away from?
Cancer.
It's too bad.
Yeah. So I think they had a good relationship. But I think she wanted more time with my dad to travel in that, and he just found it too hard to leave. And it's too bad she died so young. Yeah, because things kind of fell apart slowly but surely after that. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that everyone was tired. Al and his entire family.
His energy level wasn't there like it used to be, and then he gave me the opportunity to buy it, which was a really good opportunity. He basically was giving it to me, right? And I looked at it and I thought, you know, my family, and I got to start thinking more about them, which I did, right?
So if anyone would have taken over the business, it probably would have been you, is that right? Or
my sister and I were both kind of looked at it, but it was too much. It was too far away. We had young children at the time, and it just was not going to work.
Yeah.
And there was lots of things we didn't know about it.
Yeah. Just
the buying, mostly the buying.
52 years just like that.
It was almost like it was destined for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's how he looked at it. That's the passion behind it. That was what his life was all about.
I don't think any amount of planning could have found a buyer for Save On Meats.
Because who would be crazy enough to buy a dilapidating building in the poorest part of town while solemnly swearing to serve meat at the most savings? I mean, no one's gonna do that.
Then again, In true Al fashion, he used a bit of manifestation, a bit of resourcefulness, and he was able to spark a synergy between a developer, a restaurateur, and a number of investors who would buy the building and the business and the pigs and continue the savings. It took a few years, but Al, Victoria, and myself were finally able to meet at the newly renovated Save-On Meats. And wow, I mean, those pigs, they'd never looked more sparkly. And what was once the market floor was now divided into two. One half was the cafe, and the other half was the meat counter. And yes, it was a big change from the old Save-On Meats.
And I'll never forget the look on Al's face when he saw his beef hooves replaced by Spanish chorizo. Like, Spanish chorizo had never existed in the old Save-On Meats.
But he got over it quickly.
One of the things that I admired so much about Al was his confidence. And I think the root of that was in his ability to approach change and challenge with optimism and resourcefulness, and almost this like open door policy that just welcomed everyone.
What started with a fear of change ended up transforming into a new perspective, lifelong friendships, and the ability to do some things that I never thought were possible. And oddly enough, maybe this like super cheesy photo of me was a manifestation, because just a few years after, I won a contest to live in the Vancouver airport for 80 days and blog about my life, which helped me launch my video production business. But that's a whole different story. Life can be a grind, but who would have thought that following your heart could provide a lifetime of savings?
So we are following in the steps of a great man's legacy named Al Delorier. And Al Delorier was a really forward-thinking business owner, but some of the principles Al had at Save-On Meats was that everybody is welcome, that the staff that work here represent the community truly that we operate in, that the prices and the goods and the services of the company are accessible for everyone in the neighborhood. So those are big shoes for us to fill. But many years ago, my business partner, Mark Brand, took over from Al when he retired. And since then, we've been operating it as a real purpose-built social enterprise. So in this building, not you, but our team, we are making 1,800 meals, 1,800 meals today. Our team's been in here since 5 a.m., preparing and executing meals that are made with a lot of love, because some of the folks that are receiving these meals are living in really challenging circumstances. All right, guys, come on in. Hello, welcome. How are you? Come on in, welcome, nice to see you. And it is our philosophy that food, especially food made with love, is the key to helping people live their best lives. And that is also a major part of what you guys are going to do here today, is provide some food and provide some love to a bunch of folks that could really deserve it, and we'll be very grateful to have it. You guys excited about that part? Y'all ready for that? All right, let's do it. We are going to walk through a very busy kitchen. There's hot stuff, there's sharp stuff, there's people that are busy making those 1,800 meals for today. So stay behind me. Don't get too distracted or venture off and go other directions. But say hello to everyone. Come with me.